Yesterday is gone, tomorrow has not yet come. We have only today, let us begin. A quote from Mother Teresa. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. This week has been an eventful week. Monday saw the closing of nominations. Wednesday saw President Maithripala Sirisena making a special statement. He said that he respects the mandate of the people and did not endorse the candidacy of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa to contest the upcoming general elections. Today, we saw UPFA holding their maiden rally. The guest, former President Mahinda Rajapaksa. What is going on? What must you keep in mind when electing the next parliament? Our guests this evening are Professor Rajiv Jayasinghe, UPFA nationalist candidate and also leader of the Liberal Party. Very good evening. And good evening to you, Mr. Asoka Gunawardhanam, Chairman, Strategic Enterprise Management Agency. The journalist this evening, Nabil Majid, onto my immediate right, onto my immediate left, Sonali Vanikavadge, and onto my far left is Shahin Jurampati. We start off with Professor Rajiv Jayasinghe. Professor, 2 weeks ago, my final question to you was, will you retire or will you contest the upcoming elections? And your answer was, no, I don't want to contest the elections, nor do I want to be in this political fray. However, now you suddenly take a U-turn. You are the UPFA nationalist candidate. What is going on?
I didn't say anything of the sort. I think you're completely misquoting me.
You did say. My final question to you was, Professor Vijay, will you be contesting the elections? And you said, no, you won't be contesting the elections.
I think I said that very clearly, that I would not be standing in a district. That's what I meant. Maybe you misunderstood. But I think I pointed out that we had written a long time ago to the UPFA asking for a nationalist seat. And that was what I was hoping. But I think I told you that if it comes, I'd be happy. If it doesn't, I won't. I won't be too unhappy. I think that's the way I put it. Certainly, there was no question of my not asking for a seat. And in fact, the General Secretary of the UPFA told me, because they were having some problems, he said, if you stand in any district, we'll happily give you a nomination. And in fact, I told my party, I can't, I have no money. And some members in my party, who I think have a different view from politics than I do, said, you know, you've been an MP for 5 years, you have no money, the party has no money. At least, why didn't you sell your vehicle? I said, I don't behave like that. But no, it was very clear I was not going to contest in a district. And I think it's very important. There should be people who make it very clear that they're not into electoral politics. We're not going to be leaders and shakers. But I think the national list was meant for people like me. And I told you very clearly we had made an application to the UPFA way back in January. You know, long before I had any problems with the current government. The Liberal Party took a decision that it preferred to work with the UPFA rather than the UNP. Because while we are strong believers in good governance, and at that stage I didn't realize that the UNP had no desire for good governance whatsoever, we are also believers in social equity, in justice. We are believers in state intervention to create a level playing field. And obviously the UPFA, as led by President Maithripala Sirisena, was a much better bet in terms of the social vision the Liberals embody. So I'm afraid you've got me completely wrong, and let's replay that.
Professor Jayasinghe, whose side are you in right now? Is it President Maithripala Sirisena or former President Mahinda Rajapaksa?
I don't think there are any sides in this. I think there are people around both of them who would like to exacerbate tensions. But I think that the best system is what is being stressed by what I call the moderate leadership of the SLFP, that we need both of them. And I think it was very much the case that, you know, that some people want to highlight what they saw as negative elements in his speech of Wednesday. But I think Susil Premchand was very clear in pointing out that it was as much an attack, though, you know, it wasn't highlighted in the press, on the so-called Yahapalane and Ranil Wickremesinghe. But I think it's perfectly clear that there will be people around them who want to exacerbate tensions. I think it's very important that those of us who believe both of them have a lot to offer this country make sure that tensions are not exacerbated, and the UPFA concentrates on defeating the UNP and its rather strange set of allies in this election.
Professor Jayasinghe, very quickly tell me, what were the reasons you gave out when you supported the candidacy of President Maithripala Sirisena before the 8th of January elections?
It was very simply, as we told President Mahinda Rajapaksa, and we had been telling him this for a couple of years. We said, we cannot support you if you rush to an election unless you go through some reforms. So we didn't want everything reformed, but we mentioned that my letter is now public, that I sent him in October. You know, things like electoral reform, educational reform, and so on. But when Ranil Wickremesinghe, because I shared that letter, said, what are you going to do? I said, we cannot support President Rajapaksa. He's gone for an election unnecessarily. And there were commitments in the manifesto, and those should be fulfilled. The manifesto on which we all stood in 2010. Ranil said, then what will you do? And I said, Ranil, we can't support you. You know, I said very simply, you're going to lose. And he said, no, I've realized that. That's why I want President Kumaratunga to stand. And I said, you're even madder to expect her to win. You know, because if the election is with either of you, President Rajapaksa will sweep it, because the country has not forgotten that he won the war, and that, you know, if the battlefield was the LTT, the Chandrika Kumaratunga and Ranil Wickremesinghe didn't stand a chance. I think it was a very good thing that Maithripala Sirisena, who stood solidly behind the war effort, became the candidate, because I think the last government had got tired. In the last couple of years, there was increasing corruption, there was neglect of the seniors in the party. They were not consulted. We had written to the President in about March to say, appoint one of these three people as Prime Minister, Nimal Siripala, Susil Premchand, Maithripala Sirisena. We felt we needed new blood. And I think that government had got stale. I hope now that when the UPFA wins, it will be a renewed UPFA committed to the ideals on which Mahinda Rajapaksa won the war in 2009, but also the manifesto on which he won the election in 2010.
Thank you very much, Professor Roger Vijay Singh. I'm sure the journalists would have a lot of questions to be posed to our guest. We now move on to Mr. Asoka Gunawardena, Chairman, Strategic Enterprise Management Agency. President's special statement on Wednesday. How do you view this, Mr. Abe Gunawardena?
The President's statement was, the society was waiting to know what he's going to say for what he has done. So I think the week before, he took the decision that he should allow Mahinda Rajapaksa to contest this particular general election. So people were keen to know why he did so, and he had to explain the process. But he just did not explain that particular decision. He explained what happened since January 8th. He clearly explained the decisions and how he arrived at such decisions. I mean, that gives a clear picture that he had a tough time than while he was contesting for the presidential election. Those 2 months, I think he had less issues rather than after being the president, the difficult things he faced and why he took such decisions was I think clearly explained. I believe it's too emotional, but he could have said the same thing in a different way. But the points he raised, I am in agreement with the key points he raised and the logic behind that. So, first of all, before the elections, the presidential election, he was coming up with a 100 days program, which none of the other candidates could have proposed, because he had that privilege. He was the General Secretary of the SLFP. That was the main reason for him to have the courage to come up with a 100 days program, despite this being a parliamentary election. So, there's no parliamentary election, there was no change in the composition. Still, he was firm that he could change the Prime Minister and go ahead with the program. So, it's essential for him to be part of the UPFA, otherwise he won't be able to do that. So, there was a question why he accepted the leadership of the UPFA. It's a must. Actually, we discussed with this issue earlier to the election. Definitely, if he is going to go ahead with this manifesto he presented, definitely he should gain the control of the SLFP, otherwise he won't be able to do it. So, from that point of onwards, until the final decision was taken to allow Mahinda Rajapaksa to contest the election, it was very clear that he took the correct decision at the correct time. However, he didn't have a aggressive program to establish a condition which is much more favorable than that. But now this week's statement is so important to clarify. He gave the message to both parties, the UPFA and the UMP, that he is not satisfied about their performances. Now they need to, UPFA, they need to rebrand, they need to have a new program. They haven't done that. UNP, the performance during the 100 days is not satisfactory. What they promised, what they agreed to do with the President Maithripala Sirisena, they didn't contribute to that extent to achieve those results. So as the clear message of the President, I believe, is that the performance of the both parties are unsatisfactory, so he will take a neutral position. That gives another message to the voter, how the voter should behave.
Closure was very important. Even last week when we spoke to Dr. Pakis Saramuttu, he raised this issue up. He said that the President has to tell why he gave nomination to former President Mahinda Rajapaksa. Do you think the statement made by President Maithripala Sirisena came a bit too late?
No. I think it's a real right time, because now he had three options. One is to now the normal way of doing it is to defend his 6.2 million votes. If so, he should have a broader alliance, including UNP, TNA, JVP, and other minor parties. That was the I mean, the ultimate logical statement that should happen after the presidential election is over. That did not happen. So now he is with the UPFA. So he had few options. One is to get the control of the UPFA and not allow Mahinda Rajapaksa to contest. That will lead to a split within the SLFP, and he clearly said that he expressed two principles. Firstly, we cannot have two leaders in a single party. Second statement, he is not allowing to split his own party. So based on those two, he should allow him to contest Mahinda Rajapaksa, but while doing that, he should not support him to go back to his original process he did.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ashok Gunawardhan, Chairman of the Strategic Enterprise Management Agency. I open the floor for questions from the journalists. We'll start off with Sonali.
Thank you, Shamir. Professor Vijay Singha, my first question is to you. At one time, you were very critical of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa. Today, we are meeting you as a UPFA national list candidate. Does this mean that you endorse the former President's ideologies, policies, especially given the fact that the former President is still surrounded by the same people that he was previously?
I think you have to accept that all politicians cover a spectrum of activity. And in politics, you have to choose. Obviously, one doesn't agree with the spectrums of everybody. I might if Asoka were an active politician, because we only met him 6 months ago. But he has the same sort of academic approach to politics as I do, and a more practical touch. But unfortunately, he's not a politician. There are some others, but by and large, the people who get prominence in politics tend to do some things you like and some things you don't like. I am a solid believer in the achievements of Mahinda Rajapaksa in terms of the ethnic conflict, where he rid this country of terrorism absolutely, and also his developmental strategy. But I also believe, as you said, that there were people around him who were twisting what he was doing. In fact, I've been told that there were a lot of people who didn't like me around and kept attacking me around him because I represent a vision which I thought he had represented in 2010. But I haven't spoken to him since last September. And on that occasion, it was at my father's almsgiving, and my sister was a bit cross with him for not having turned up for the funeral. But I told her, don't be silly, because he had to run the Uber campaign single-handed. And I believe that Mahinda Rajapaksa, the president, was being used by a lot of people around him to run elections far too often. In 2009, I'd sent him a memo saying, don't have the presidential election early. And he told me after with a certain degree of scorn, he said, you and Gota are the only people who said that, as though to tell us you are not politicians. You know, I listen to people who know. But later I think it was admitted it was a mistake to have that election early. So I think I respect all those, but during the last 2 years, things did go wrong. The wrong sort of people took over. They were, I think, misleading him in telling him there wasn't a serious international threat. And that's why I have the highest regard for Nivad Cabral, the governor of the bank. You know, the present government was blackguarding him for having got Desmond de Silva to do a defense for us. But they have now used Desmond de Silva and renewed the contract. And I kept saying no one is taking the international threat serious.
So let me just interrupt you for a second there. I just want to know, do you endorse the policies of the former president?
I endorsed the 2005 manifesto and the 2010 manifesto. And my point was a lot of the things in that manifesto were not being fulfilled. I hope the new manifesto will be a blend of the Maithripala Sirisena manifesto, which I also endorsed, and I have been horrified that that has been completely ignored.
But you are aware that the presidential race was between two individuals, that is President Maithripala Sirisena and former President Mahinda Rajapaksa, individuals. However, you supported former President Maithripala Sirisena, who is now in power.
Because
what was the thinking at that time?
The important point then
Yeah.
was the fact that good governance had gone out of the window. There was not enough consultation, there was not enough attention to a lot of the seniors in the SLFP, and there was not enough attention to the previous manifesto of
However, the
2010.
UPFA candidates are stressing the fact that the premiership should be given to former President Mahinda Rajapaksa. Then the seniority is not into play. It doesn't come into play at that time. Is it, Professor Vijay Singh?
No, because the simple fact is on our present constitution, and I'm so glad we resisted Ranil Wickremesinghe's efforts to give full executive power to the Prime Minister. The President is the chief executive of the country. He's the head of the cabinet. The Prime Minister also has a major role to play, and I hope that whoever is Prime Minister, I think if the UPF has a clear victory, they will want Mahinda Rajapaksa. Will I hope be a Prime Minister like Ranasinghe Premadasa was and like Mahinda Rajapaksa was, an active person, but number two to the President. And the primary part of the manifesto is the President's 2015 manifesto, which was being completely ignored by the UNP. You know, they've done one thing in that whole manifesto.
So
I believe it is important to
give me a second.
Can I just finish
Professor
my
Vijay
last
Singh, no, I
sentence?
just want to ask you. You just said that in February you requested that either Susil Premajayanth be made the Prime Minister or Nimal Siripal de Silva made the Prime Minister. However, now you are saying it's fine for former President Mahinda Rajapaksa to be elected as the Prime Minister.
This was what I suggested in 2014. I wrote a letter to President Rajapaksa, who was the President, and whom I hoped would go on for another 2 years.
Yes, now they've gone.
I said we don't have a good Prime Minister. Make one of the senior SLFP members Prime Minister, all three of them. I actually said Maithripala as well. I still have the letter. Because I felt we needed a strong Prime Minister who would not second-guess the President. He has to work with the President. But we needed someone to present an alternative from a strong political perspective, not the kitchen cabinet that was running much of the government at the time. I have said this. I have discussed it with, I think, the former President's most loyal, dedicated supporter, Lalit Veeratunga, who I believe also agreed with me that we needed a change. And I think the same thing should happen now, where President Sirisena, unfortunately, has a Prime Minister who's not doing what he wants.
I'm going to interrupt you. Unfortunately, we are short on question time as well. I want to ask you this. You were talking about how little has been achieved in the 2015 100 Days Manifesto. You were talking about how you endorsed the 2005 Mahinda Chintane and the 2010 Mahinda Chintane. Comparatively, a lot more has been achieved in the 2015 Manifesto. I'll give you an example. Information is the oxygen of democracy, they say. In 2005 Mahinda Chintane, a commitment was made to right to information. In 2010, it was somewhat downgraded to we recognize the importance of the freedom of information. So given the fact that if you look at track records, surely a lot more has been done in terms of the 100 Days program than in all of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa's manifestos put together.
Complete rubbish.
Rubbish.
Because if you look at the manifesto, which I helped to write, there are 7 commitments with regard to good governance, of which only one was done, the 19th Amendment. Even that, to me, was inadequate. It does incorporate the right to information as a basic right. But what I argued for is put in the whole Bill of Rights that was pledged in the 2005 manifesto, and which I, as Secretary to the Ministry, ensured a draft was prepared at the end of 2009. Unfortunately, neither the minister nor the president was
But
keen.
you're now supporting the prime ministerial candidacy of the man who did not implement them.
No, of course he didn't, but there were people around him. That's why I changed sides in 2010.
And as Sonali mentioned, it's the same people that are around him now.
No, they're not, for the very simple reason that for the first time, the senior leadership of the SLFP, which I much like, Nimal Siripala, Susil Premchand, John Seneviratne, are now in positions, Anupriya Darshana, positions of importance. I told John Seneviratne 2 years ago, I said, please stop usurpation of your ministry by another ministry.
Yeah.
He said, what do you
Mr.
mean?
Abhigunawardhan,
I said,
want to,
can I finish?
Yeah, yeah.
Economic development. And John looked at me and said, that's usurping every ministry.
Yeah.
I think it's a very good thing that Mr. Basil Rajapaksa, who is a good worker, but who should never have been politically ambitious, is not on the list this
Mr.
time.
Abhigunawardhan, I want to bring you into this
Hold
conversation.
on.
You wrote,
I'll
just finish this.
Please,
You
go ahead.
wrote shortly after the presidential election, you wrote this book that I found rather interesting, Yuga Peraliya. Do you foresee another Peraliya happening to your Yuga Peraliya?
Well, now, yeah, it's a twist actually. Now, what we were expecting is to, for the Maithripala Sirisena, the president, to get hold of the UPFA and change that to a completely different setup so that he can continue that good work after the next election.
That has not happened. Do you think that this can happen under with Mahinda Rajapaksa as the Prime Minister?
I don't think. I'm not for Mahinda Rajapaksa to be the next Prime Minister. But I mean, from his side, he should he retired from politics. But it was the followers who tried to convince him to be to contest again. They made a great mistake. I mean, the core issue is neither the intention of Maitri nor Mahinda Rajapaksa, but the absence of a second in command. That was the key issue of UPFA and SLFP. Still, they are struggling to have a second in command other than Maitri and Mahinda. That core issue need to be addressed. That's why President Maithripala Sirisena had to allow Mahinda Rajapaksa to contest, not only to contest. After the elections only, which that will be decided who is going to be the Prime Minister. So it's an open game. So I agree that Maithripala Sirisena, the president, had no other option other than giving Mahinda Rajapaksa to contest. That
And
should
if
have
the
happened because
UPFA wins the election,
within the UPFA and SLFP democratic framework, that was the voice of the SLFPers and the second in command, and I mean those who were supposed to be the medium level leaders. So that was the voice. So he had to listen to that. But that's only to contest. But beyond that, it's an open game. After the elections only, we can determine which way it's leading to.
Professor Vijay Singh, you just mentioned that you supported President Maithripala Sirisena before the presidential election because you felt that then President Mahinda Rajapaksa's good governance was out of the window. What makes you think that bringing him back will bring back good governance?
Because the president is Maithripala Sirisena, who is deeply committed to good governance. But you also have to remember that a government has several obligations. And if you've read my book on political principles and practice, I start with the main ones, which also include security and development. Now, it does seem to me that these have been forgotten. If you read the longer version of the Maithripala Sirisena manifesto, not even in the short 100-day program, there's a list of another 100 things. There is a much longer manifesto, which is a great document. None of it has been looked at. Now, one of my big complaints last year, you probably read what I wrote long before the election, was that while I celebrated the infrastructural development that the Mahinda Rajapaksa government had done, I kept saying there's not enough on human resources development. This government has done nothing on human resources development, even though the manifesto has some very, very simple points that are there. I've outlined some of them. We wanted to restructure even a very simple thing like the waste of time that kids go through after schools. I did a very simple cabinet paper. After I resigned, no one even bothered to look at it. I told the ministers, look at the University Act. I actually drafted an act together with 3 senior academics. And I said, at least put it to people. Nothing was done. They're not concerned about the bread and butter of government. And I think that is disgraceful because under the Mahinda Chintanaya, a lot of things were done that were promised.
So, Professor Vijay Singh, would you say that you made a mistake by supporting now President Maithripala Sirisena?
Not at all, because I think we needed a change. I think the SLFP has been rejuvenated, because a lot of the seniors were also very upset last year, as you know, by the cabal. None of them, you know, a lot of us had discussions. They didn't complain about Mahinda Rajapaksa, but they complained about other people around him. And I'm glad to say that many of those are not contesting. Don't forget there is a difference between those who were influential under that government, and they're not around now in positions where they will have the same political ambitions, and the fact that there is an energy about the way Mahinda Rajapaksa ran the country, which is also needed. Now, if you take the very simple fact, today at the press conference, I showed what a volte-face the UNP has engaged in. They attacked all the Chinese projects. They stopped, for instance, the Central Expressway. In July, Ranil Wickremesinghe did what I think is an extraordinary cunning thing. As you know, he claimed he was cutting out the corruption because Mahinda Rajapaksa paid too much. He cut the outer circular cost and said, I've saved a lot of money. How did he save it? By cutting the lanes from 6 to 4. Not only that, he has then pledged to give that money back to this company without a proper tender procedure. So that there's a lot of corruption without the same effectiveness. Whatever it is, you know, to me, going on the Southern Highway, I realized President Rajapaksa built the Southern Highway, which 2 previous presidents had dithered over. So you have to recognize that. That is not all government is about, but there was a substantial achievement, and we have seen nothing in the last 6 months to even rival that. What we have seen instead is more and more subtle ways of stealing money. And I think the one thing that I was, you know, really keen on was to try and eliminate corruption. Now they're making allegations against the Mahinda Rajapaksa government. I'm sure there were people who made a lot of money which they shouldn't have. But why did they not do the simple point I made in January? I said, make the declarations of assets public, allow anyone to look at them, allow anyone to question them. And that is how you actually reveal who has been making money falsely. They didn't do that. Why? Because they have the same problem themselves. That is why I think a lot of the efforts to eliminate corruption fail.
Now, as of late, whenever former President Mahinda Rajapaksa gets on the platform, the constant reminder that he makes is the fact that he won the war for the country. That's actually amazing. But then, don't you think it's been so many years since we won the war? We should, yes, leave it behind and move forward. Forget that we won the war. Stop reminding the people that we won the war and move forward. Don't you think it's essential that we do that?
Well, yeah, I think they are on the wrong track, I must say, because now they are trying to come up with a new concept like new beginning or something. Now they are trying to frame it right now. This is not the new beginning. This is the old story. Now, if they are going to rebrand and have a fresh start, then they should. I mean, it's immaterial about the person, but it's not Mahinda that is the issue, but let's say it's a culture or Mahindaism or something like that. That should be defeated. So, to that extent, even in the presence of Mahinda Rajapaksa, that can happen as a unit, UPFA and SLFP. That is led by Maithripala Sirisena. So, that's a possibility that they should target, because they should accept that they lost in January. They should accept that 5.8 million is not sufficient for them to win this election. So, they need to attract the others. Mainly, I think there are 3 categories. Like if you broadly classify, you have a firm UNPers, you have firm SLFPers, and the floating vote. Now, actually, I am part of that floating vote. So, if they want to attract us, they should drastically change their approach. Just discussing about the former development work and the war is not adequate. For the future, we need to have new programs based on what Maithripala Sirisena proposed in his manifesto in January.
It's the old story and not a new beginning. That's what Mr. Abhay Gunawardena said. Agreed or disagreed, Professor Vijay Singh?
I think we do need a new beginning very much indeed.
Is it the old story?
No, but I also think you have to have the foundation. And what I found astonishing about this government is they were trying to belittle what happened in 2009. I fully agree that that cannot be the basis of a new government. But you cannot pretend it didn't occur. You cannot actually mock what actually happened in 2009. Now, I think the real problem was that the Maitripala Sirisena approach, which is solid support for the war victory, but let's move on, was overtaken by the Ranil Wickremesinghe approach, which sort of belittled what happened in 2009, which tried to stress the international community's criticism. They didn't want us to win the war. Now, Maitripala Sirisena stood by Mahinda Rajapaksa during that war. Ranil Wickremesinghe and Ravi Karunayake and Mangal Samari were not interested. Mangal Samari had the gall to tell me about 5 years ago that he held me responsible, because he said if you and Dan hadn't won that victory in Geneva in 2009, okay, then there would have been less arrogance on the part of the government. Now, I'm not saying I think the arrogance was wrong. I think we should have fulfilled a lot of the commitments we made. But I think for Mangal Samari to have wanted us to have lost in Geneva in 2009 is disgraceful.
Thank you very much, Professor Vijay Singh. Thank you very much, Mr. Avia Gunwardana. We're now going for a short commercial break. Think wisely before you vote. We come back and we will meet you after this short commercial break. Stay connected. Stay with us. This is Face the Nation.